Hey there,
Hello,
how's it going?
hello. How's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of Glasshouse Presents Throwing Stones. We have a great show for you today. We have a colorist extraordinaire and inspiration for my career, uh, early on and continuing, John Rauch.
Yeah,
So,
this is going to be fantastic because our first few weeks here, we had, of course, Glasshouse graphics artists.
right,
So Mike Diodato and Will Conrad and Cliff Richards and so on. And uh, everybody tells me, you need to expand your horizons. And one of the things I find is I'm working with close to 200 artists worldwide. So my focus is often on that. But there are such great talents out there that I don't get a chance to meet, to communicate with, all because I'm focused on our group of folks. So I'm
right.
so happy to have John on today. So let's bring him in and let's learn some great stuff.
All right. Hi, John. How you doing?
Good, good.
All
How you
right.
been?
It's fantastic to have you on. I'm so glad you could make it. So I have, I guess, known you since probably 2007, back in the Gutter Zombie days. You remember?
Yeah, yeah.
You remember Gutter Zombie?
The good old days. Yeah, I
Yeah, right.
really like that
All right,
place.
fill the rest of this in. Gutter Zombie?
So that was
Okay.
Dave McCaig's brainchild,
Ah,
and it was his website, and it was mainly a colorist haven. He had a professional section where you could go and get reviews on stuff you were doing that nobody else could see, and then a regular section where everybody could post, and there was job
mhm.
sections and all that stuff. Way before the days of Facebook, and so there was a pretty diverse crew there.
Yeah.
And yeah, John's one of the artists that I came across, so loved his work. And oh, and Dave came up with the name because comic artists tend to, they keep ridiculous hours. And so at like 1 in the morning, you go and you look at yourself in the mirror and you look like a friggin' gutter zombie. So that's why he named it Gutter Zombie.
I
Hilarious.
resemble that remark. Yeah.
All right. So if you could, John, give us a little bit of enlightenment as to how you got into the industry.
Sure, sure. So I live in central Illinois, and when I was young, we had a little studio in a town nearby that was coloring comics, and that's what the newspaper article said as I read it. By the time I was 16, I got a chance to go in there and job shadow for a day. And I brought my little colored pencil portfolio, and I found out what they were actually doing is what we would call color separations.
Right.
But it was a chance for me to get in and learn Photoshop, and I worked in house there for a couple of years. And you wouldn't see my name on anything, it was all uncredited. But I did that for several years and then ended up finding some clients on my own after that and worked back up to, the Marvel and DC and, all the relevant names.
Okay.
When you say you were doing the color separations, or they were doing those, how are you referring to it? Because I go back
So,
far enough to understand the marking up uh, photocopies that you did with Dr. Martin's dyes with R2 Y2 for flesh
it's
tone, and then cutting sheets of ruthlith or doing shades of gray over frosted acetate and shooting those. So that's what I think of.
right. So the first half of that, it's exactly that, but we weren't cutting sheets of acetate. It was early on in the digital art days. So what we were doing was taking a guide from the name I remember working with a lot was Pat Garrett. He used to do the guides for Justice League back in the day, and a bunch
Okay.
of he had like 20 DC books at one time. It was wild. So he would do these in the Doc Martin dyes, and some like other books might be watercolor, or depending on who the color artist is, you get varying levels of information. Some people would mark it up, like you said, with the CMYK values. And then we would just go through and use the digital tools to try to recreate that, you know, as closely as we could. But there'd be a team of us. So it was like, you know, 5, 6, 7 people trying to match the same style, be consistent, and, you know, share a palette across the book.
Very, very cool. So when was the shift that you noticed from color separator to actual colorist, like just doing the whole job?
I I think probably around 2000. I think in the 90s, the situation was a lot of like the people who had the computer skills weren't the same people with the art skills. So a lot of people who weren't really talented artists yet got their opening there because they were proficient in a tool. And then over time, you know, more people could do it. The tools were more accessible, and it just had to be one person.
Okay. Very, very cool. I love that. Yeah, because I was that always fascinates me, like who had the idea to just say, okay, you do the whole thing in Photoshop now, and why did they do the like the color guides and the color separation for so long?
Yeah, it was totally just necessity. You know, that was how the process began, and then at some point it became easier to do it once instead of twice.
Yeah, and even today, colorists are widely regarded as part of the not the artist side, but the process,
Sure, sure.
the mechanical process of it.
Yeah.
We don't they don't necessarily get the recognition for being the artists that they are. So
Well, yeah, I mean that's true, and it's okay that like I think an average person understands that the art team are all artists, but it's true that the coloring side of it leans harder on technical knowledge. You know, we can apply lighting, we can, you know, memorize a tool set, you know.
right, exactly. All right, cool. So what was your first like professional job for like Marvel or DC? What was one of the big, if you
You mean
remember?
under my own name?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what was my first one? This wasn't my first DC gig ever, but the first one that really stood out to me was Teen Titans Year One. It was really difficult. I got a lot of attention for it and felt like felt like I met the goal, made everybody happy. So yeah, that was one that really stood out for me.
Okay, very cool. How many pages a day were you cranking out back then?
As many as they needed, you know, like when you're desperate for it, you know, you're a hungry kid and they offer you work. If they say we need this book by Friday, then you figure out how long it takes, and then you figure out how much you can sleep after that.
Exactly. Gutter zombie.
Yes,
Exactly. All right. Well, let's take a look at some of your work here.
sure.
So, all right. Let's take a look at some of your work. So we have some of your work from Invincible,
Oh yeah, I've
which
seen
is
that somewhere.
just really fantastic stuff. Like I personally think this was really groundbreaking color as far as palettes and just style.
Oh,
This is just really amazing stuff.
thank you.
I just absolutely love your colors on this book.
I have to say, I appreciate the compliment, but my mindset when I was working on it was just to build on the colorists that came before me on the series because I was a fan of it before I got to work on it.
Who came before you?
Uh, FCO came before me, I think.
Okay, all right. I
But
wasn't
you know,
sure where you were in the lineup of
well,
colorists.
yeah. So Bill Crabtree started the series, and he's kind of like that defining old school look, you know. And I really liked his palette. FCO was the one that started like with all the fancy rendering, you know, and I tried to combine those two modes. There was a couple other guys in there, but I don't think they were on for enough issues for me to remember.
Well, your palettes are what really stand out to me. I just absolutely, they're just really, really striking. And you almost take, in a lot of books, you almost take like almost a minimalist approach
Right.
to coloring. Is
Yeah.
that out of necessity or just personal taste?
I think one of the first things I think about when I'm trying to organize what a scene is the emotional content, the mood I want to deliver. And the stronger I want that mood to be, the fewer colors I really want in the scene. If you have a big superhero fight, you got to use the whole palette, and that's a thing. That's cool if that's what you need, but that doesn't feel emotionally resonant. When you really want to like sell a mood, you have to cut it back.
Right.
When you're coloring on most of these books, are are you handling your part before the letterer or after the letterer or while
Generally,
the
generally before, back in the '90s, it was the opposite, and it was kind of nice to not have to color those little sections. Save a little bit of landscape, but it's probably better to do it before and be able to see the full scene.
in those cases, do the editors provide you with the script so that you understand all the nuances?
Yes, yes, I always get a script before I start, and if they forget, I'll request it because the worst thing is to color 11 pages of daytime and find out it's night.
So you
Yeah.
got some Bat family work here. Now I remember you stating once, I don't remember where you said this, that you develop a new set of brushes and a new rendering style for each book that you do. Is that still true? Is that still something you do?
That's absolutely not still true.
Okay.
I, I I have a library of techniques that I will kind of bank on and maybe, pull this one out of the hat here and there. But I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel anymore. I'm trying to, play the hits and improve where I can.
Which makes sense because you've been doing it for long enough that you know what works.
Yeah. And as valuable as experimentation is, not every experiment is a winner. So you have to learn from the feedback.
Thank you, Rizart. Thank you, thank you. It says beautiful colors.
Thank you.
Yeah, just stunning.
John,
Do you?
what
Oh, go
what
ahead.
what colorists do you admire these days?
I'm reading so few other people's books right now that I feel it's going to be disrespectful to not be able to list current names. I I don't think she's still coloring anymore. I used to really like to see Jordi Belair's. I still like to see Laura Martin when she works. Dave McCaig is brilliant. Nathan Fairbairn. I think both of those guys worked on Invincible after me and made me look bad, so I got to mention them.
Oh no, they did not make you look bad. That's for sure.
Yeah. Rico Renzi, he's pretty great. There's so many.
All right. I understand the part about not seeing a lot of the current stuff because you're so busy on your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, people ask me, they'll say, so what comics do you read? I said, I'm a professional comic artist. I can't afford to buy comics.
Right. Right.
I miss the days when the publishers sent me everything. Yeah, so I could just thumb through all the books and keep up.
Yeah. I have a difficult time being in creator mode and reader mode at the same time. I want to either be a fan or a creator and alternate.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite penciler that you work with?
Hmm. I guess there's different answers to that. Sam Lotfi is one artist who I've really enjoyed working with. Nick Bradshaw, especially good.
I was going to say Nick. I know you've worked a lot with Nick.
Yeah, yeah, not as much volume as some of the other people I've worked with, but just by technical proficiency, it's so hard not to put him at the top of the list.
And of course, I'm having a brain fart. Who drew these?
Tony Moore.
Tony Moore.
Moore.
Thank you. Yeah, Colonel Tony Moore. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. He's a particular favorite of mine. So
yeah, he's up there.
love his work. Got some X-Men here. Oh, yeah, just the color palette on this is just gorgeous. Skin tones, everything just pops. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I really like the illusion of detail. You know, if you can really limit that, then the viewer finds themselves accidentally looking where they're supposed to.
Right, yeah, drawing the eye, yeah. And that's one thing I don't like working in independents, because they have the mentality that if you don't render every single thing on the page to the extreme, they're not getting their money's worth. Whereas it's not like that necessarily in, the big leagues.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I kind of understand what they're getting at. They want to feel like you put in the effort, I guess, but that doesn't necessarily make it better.
Right.
The sad part of that is when you're dealing in the independent market, you're dealing with less seasoned artists who really need the colorist to help move the reader's eye through the panels and pages, because they don't necessarily understand that eye flow that helps get the reader through the page in the right order. So
Yeah.
sometimes the colorist has to take on the burden of some of that. And if they're expected to render every single thing, they don't have that opportunity to improve that storytelling.
Right. This is a particularly stunning piece, and this is Nick Bradshaw, right?
Yes, correct.
Did you guys discuss the color palette on this, or was it just something you just went with, or already had in your head?
It's just something I went with. I always like when I get the chance to use that wild, like fuchsia magenta energy color, and I just thought with, I don't know, it just seemed like I could go with all the weird stuff on this one. So I did.
Right. You got the Kirby crackle in the background. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous.
This is Sam Lotfi, who I mentioned earlier.
Very nice.
Also Sam.
Turtles. Oh, yes. This is Tony Moore as well. Venom, Agent Venom or something like that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. And I particularly love I love the textures also that you put into your colors. Like, it's not just a cut and grad. You actually, a lot of your pages, you actually put texture into the colors.
Yeah, I think that's one of those illusion of detail things that really helps me out, where you can, if you're not doing anything with texture, when you leave something flat, it really looks flat. It looks like your eye's drawn to the flatness of it. But if you kind of employ universal texture, like if there's paper or a canvas, impacting it, I think that kind of diffuses it out, makes it a little more believable and less obvious.
Absolutely. And we also have a couple pieces here that you included. This is for tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
Some art that you created yourself.
Yes.
How did you come about that gig?
So my friend Angry Blue, Justin Kamara, got a gig for this company called Gripner, and Gripner was making an online TTRPG, with like they'd play it in the online space with, kind of like we're talking here, I guess. And they needed some art to fill out their world, and like if you get loot, if you get a character, this kind of thing. So we went through, like, as a team. There was him, me, and a guy named Dan, and then we had a couple other assistants who were involved at various times. But we created like kind of a paper doll setup that created like 10,000 original characters for new players to pick their bios from. And then after that, the job was to start creating the loot items and treasure that you'd get while playing the game. And I ended up getting to draw a lot of that. So that's
very, very cool. And this is what was it called? A ring of stored wishes or something, or with ring of stored spells or something like that. I think it was called.
Yeah, it's stored spells or spell casting or something like that. But yeah, it's
Very, very cool. I love it. And so we also wanted to talk a little bit about the coloring process for people who are interested in doing that, and maybe starting coloring, just starting out.
sure.
So when you get a page, this is what it looks like
Yeah.
typically, right?
Yes.
And so a colorist has to be able to separate the line art, the inks from the white and get rid of the white.
Yeah.
So and there's a couple different processes to how you can do that. So how do you do that?
You mean just the technical? How do I do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I work in Clip Studio Paint. There's a function that I forget what it's even called. I have it up. I could look at it. Convert brightness to opacity, and I just
Okay.
run that on that layer. It drops out the blacks, or it drops out the whites, and then later on in the process, if I want to hold any of the lines as a color, it's already set up easy to do that.
I love that about Clip Studio. Much easier process than in Photoshop. You got to create a mask and just it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So from here, you go to what are called flats.
Let me ask you before you start coloring. Generally speaking, do you get line art from publishers ready to color, or do you have to finesse and clean up anything?
Almost always it's good to go. Occasionally you'll get, I won't name names, but there are some high profile artists who I think take iPhone pictures of their art and send it out. That does happen occasionally, but usually those of us who work for a living know better.
Okay.
And so typically the flat process here is well, just explain the flat process.
Okay, so one of the things that helps if you're going to color is to know the language that the artists are working with. And when I'm flatting, I typically tend to think through the lens of, like, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work.
Mm-hmm, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so every artist you work with will understand that terminology, and they'll probably frame their panels according to one of those templates. And those templates do a great job of deciding depth wise where the planes are, where the focus is. And I will start typically with what's called local colors, which means, like, if you're just in an average lit room and there's nothing moody going on, I will fill in some basic stuff just to give myself a sense of what this room, what this area looks like. And then I'll go back through thinking about the planes, and I'll make one darker and cooler. I'll make one lighter and warmer, whatever push pull I need to do to kind of give it a little depth and direct the eye just from the flat color stage.
Okay. And from a technical standpoint, the flats are there to not only put down the local color, but also for selection.
Yes.
Make it easy for selection.
Yeah, especially if you're doing a lot of rendering, it's nice to just have a mask already there for anything you want to paint on.
Okay, and so from there we move. Oh, what was I going to ask you? Oh, I can't remember. I had a question ready. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you flat your own work, or do you hire out a flatter?
I do both. It depends on my schedule at the time, and how much I like the art. If it's art I just really like digging into, sometimes I'll flat it myself just to play with it longer. If I'm in a hurry and that's not feasible, it's okay. I don't have any problem using the flatter.
And I remember I think it was one of your process videos where you said that because typically when you're flatting your own stuff, you're using the lasso tool. And you said that sometimes you use a flatting brush, and just because you like the feel of it better.
Yeah, I these days I do almost everything in a tactile way. I'll use a pencil that's got a hard edge to it and just draw the outline and then bucket fill in the middle.
Yeah, I do the same thing, and I switch back and forth from lasso to pencil tools. So I
Yeah.
do the same thing.
I,
All
I
right.
started, go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I started in the '90s when we had to do everything with a mouse, and I found that it's just more enjoyable to use the tools that feel like real art tools, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it makes the process a lot more enjoyable. And so then we go to you're adding in. We're starting to render here, and you're adding in the darker tones.
Sure, yeah.
So there are some rules about when you're adding shadows in on a page. Can you explain that?
I think probably what you're referring to is the old art school adage of, you don't shade with black and white, I guess.
Yes.
And yeah, it's typically a no-no just because light doesn't really work that way. It's not the way we perceive things most of the time. So what I will do is create a palette kind of the same way a colored pencil artist or a painter might pick their colors, and I'll just take them to every page with me, and I'll create the light curve, I guess you'd say. Like if
Okay.
you imagine your mid-tone is a neutral space, then your shadows need to bend one way and your highlights need to bend one way. So I'll
Okay.
create all of that at the beginning and use it as a system.
Very, very cool. I love that. So you use a lot of the like you don't use levels, you use a lot of curves.
I'm describing a curve in my head, but I'm just using swatches.
Okay.
I'm punching in the numbers I want.
Gotcha. All right. So then you're adding in some highlights.
Mhm.
That's gonna make that. And so a lot of not a lot of colors, but I've seen colorists that go against the pencilers uh, defined shadows and lighting.
Mhm.
Have you ever had a situation where you've done that, where you thought, oh, this just looks better, or you always go with what the penciler and inker have laid down?
I would say if you spot a time where it looks like I did that, it's probably because I painted myself into a corner where I understood the light one way and then got to something that made it look, it's usually a source of confusion, not a choice to go against what's there. That's
Okay.
not a good storytelling technique, I don't think.
Right, right. I have seen it done though. Not necessarily by not you. I'm not talking about you, but I've seen colorists do it, and it just yeah, it doesn't usually it doesn't work
Well,
out well.
yeah, I'm sure you could find an example for me too. You know, nobody's perfect. Every artist is going to have some slip up here and there, or just use some reference that you don't have access to and you're trying to guess what they meant.
Right. All right. So wait, what are we doing here? Oh yeah. So what is this process? I think this is where you're adding the gradient in.
Let me see again. I can't.
You go from like especially the background there, and you go to that.
Okay, so what I have what I was talking about with my color picking and taking that from page to page, I will have a folder full of layers that are already predefined to the colors I want. And one of the layers that I'd like to leave in that folder is like a blockout layer. So if you think about the Wayward 22 panels, one of them is always going to be where you've got a plane that's not the main plane, like that bottom panel. We see a character that's close to us and we're looking past them.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
right. So what I want to do is push that towards a muted color. I'll still render it. I'll still handle it like normal with my other layers, but then I'll have a layer that's got a gradient map on it that's just going to push it into the range that I like. And I'll take every panel, every plane on the page that needs that, and just use that to keep my visual language consistent.
Okay. Very very cool. I love that. And so can you explain a little bit about the classic coloring when you're trying to shift focus, and so coloring different characters in like an odd color, like blue or purple.
Mhm.
What's your? Can you explain the reasoning for that?
Oh, like why I would use that?
Yeah, like
Um, go ahead.
the person in the foreground here is colored purple. Just to our readers or our listeners, explain why that's done.
Okay, so typically, like that example right there, it's that the system that I created for this scene has a real cool blue shadow. But if I just use shadows for every instance that I want to block out, it's kind of implying something different than what I'm trying to. So I like to go with a maroon or something just as an additive layer there that tells you this is a different plane, something's different. We're still working in comics and it's got to be colorful, you know, but also finding a way to mute it towards a color that's harmonious with the scene and kind of dulls the impact so you understand intuitively this isn't the key thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
very cool.
Before we go further, I wanted to, for those who don't or don't know what John's talking about with the Wallywood's 22 panels, this is it. Uh, so I don't know how many of the younger viewers or younger professionals have even seen this.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yes, it is.
But obviously it breaks down different ways of uh, drawing panels that obviously always work. And so this is out there. There's also even a revised version of this that I think Larry Hama had put up.
Oh, okay.
And but anyway, I wanted the viewers to just to see this so they understood what you were talking about.
And
Yeah.
I love the brazenness of that, like the brazenness of saying this is always going to work. This is what I do, and this is always going to work.
Yeah.
So
In a way, you kind of notice over time it's also descriptive, not just prescriptive. Like this is what everybody was drawing anyway. So now we just put words to it and we know what we mean.
Yeah.
right. And so it seems like here you're adding you're lightening up the blacks on the page. Is that
I think that may have something to do with how that exported for whatever those should just be solid black lines. I think that might be an export issue.
Oh, okay. All right, my bad.
Yeah, it's okay. No big
Apologize.
deal. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't intentionally send gray blacks.
Okay, I was wondering if there was a reason for that or not. So, all right, good deal. So, yes, that should be the final page. The nice crisp blacks,
Yeah.
all the panels separated properly. Everything looks beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get that. All right. So, are there any current projects that you're working on that you would like to share with our listeners
Sure.
and
So
that they need to tune into?
yeah, you just looked at a page from American Yakuza. Doing that with Charlie McKelvey. He's one of the writers on it. Damiano Restivo is the artist. They've been kickstartering. Is that a verb? Did I do that right?
I think you just made up a word.
They're- they've been crowdfunding the series, and it's going really well. We're on the final issue, and they're going to collect it as a trade. So, make that as successful as possible, so we can keep making stuff like it.
All right, very cool. Well, it's been fantastic having you on, John, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was great because I learned something today, and I've been in the business 40 plus years, so it's always good to learn.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yes, it was fantastic. All right, you have a great rest of your day, John.
Appreciate it.
Bye. All righty. So
I am so glad John was able to join us tonight and did it live. So that's wonderful.
yes, absolutely. Okay, I have to do some finagling here, remove some stuff from the studio, and then I will upload our portfolio for our portfolio section.
Uh-oh. I never know what I'm going to get.
All right.
So portfolios are always interesting because whether it's artwork, lettering, inking, coloring, whatever, uh, I'm always hoping it's going to be the next great, wonderful thing. No revisions needed, and I can tell the guy, hey, I know who to call to get you a job tomorrow.
Right. That is always the hope. But in reality, it rarely ever is like that.
Uh, it's one of the tough parts is not just portfolios from people wanting to break in, but folks that have been toiling away at the lower budget companies. The ones that pay small page rates, or you'll get 25 copies of the book and a nickel if it sells beyond X amount of copies. Uh, they're working at it. They're seeing their work in print and thinking, okay, I'm getting the experience. And sometimes that's true. But if they're working for a company that has a guy who or gal running it who's a comic fan, but not necessarily an experienced editor, they may not be getting everything out of it that they should be getting as they're doing the work. Because
Right.
heaven knows they're not making a living doing the work. They're doing it for to be published and for the experience. But is it a good enough experience that once they've done it for a year or two, they can show it to a major editor or an agent like me that is able to get them to the next level? We talked in previous things. Does somebody have 30 years experience or 1 year of experience 30 times? If they haven't been able to grow for whatever reason, then they come at it ill-equipped to get the jobs that they hope they can get.
Exactly. All right, so it is time for the portfolio section, kids.
Ooh.
Oops, what happened?
Well, that's good enough. Let's go on to the portfolios.
Yeah, let's try. Well, all right. I don't know what happened there, but let's just move on to the portfolios.
I'm going to need to talk to the guy in charge of this.
Right? Fired!
Oh, my gosh.
All right.
Hey,
We have our...
is there a way to make this bigger on my own screen? Because I'm looking at it at about the size of a trading card here.
I am not sure because let's just do full screen here.
Okay.
Does that help at all?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So let me see a few pages of this. What do we got this here?
We got Lobo.
Okay.
Kicking some butt.
Which of these screens is it? Okay. Is that this one? Yes. I got it right?
Nope. Oh, yeah. Yep, you got it.
Okay. So sometimes I got to flip through it all to get a good feel for what's going on.
Raven says, try putting your screen in theater mode.
Now you get technical on me. All right, let me see this here. All right, this guy is interesting. He's a guy, I would say he's not ready for prime time for the big companies, but it's clear he's got some talent here. I look at the Lobo pages and I know he's trying to get busy and wild because it's a busy and wild character.
Right.
So that's fine. I'm not normally a fan of inset panels the way he's doing it, but it works for what he's got here. I find it interesting that here he is doing multiple pages here, and except for these last panels, everything is long shots. It's like for whatever reason maybe it's in the script this way, maybe it's his way of drawing it, but the camera doesn't move in a way that we're getting any more interesting or dramatic angles. So you've got these hodgepodge of lots of details, but everything's in a long shot. So I wish he moved those around a little bit. I also see where what we do see of faces. I wish the faces were just a little better.
It also looks like he was working in a very distinctively different style,
Yeah,
like almost like an animated style for this
yeah,
one, for the
and
global segment.
and that is fine. I love when artists are able to bring multiple styles to the business. Some of the best artists I've had over the years, Fabio Laguna, Manuel Bretano, Vincenzo Cucca, guys like that can draw, in half a dozen styles. Heck, Joe Bennett can draw in half a dozen styles. So, all right, these are nice pages for what they are. I think they could be a bit better. I think they could be a bit more dramatic, but he's got some pretty decent faces in it, especially the female face. Um, the storytelling is certainly clear enough on the left-hand page here. Um, right-hand page, well, it's all medium and long shots, but it seems to do well enough. But it's not something I go, oh wow, I can get you a job at DC or pitch you to Marvel tomorrow. Uh, it doesn't seem to be quite at that level yet. Uh,
And I feel like that's really important to note, that it's not just drawing ability. It's storytelling ability
yeah,
that's
well,
going to get you.
yeah. Remember what we talked about in previous things. You've got to have the ability to tell the story in pictures. You got to have a style an editor is willing to buy. You've got to have the professional attitude, and so on. And part of um, doing this is having a strong storytelling sense that really works. And I think what happens is a lot of these guys aren't looking back on books that are more than 5 years older than they are,
Right.
and some of those didn't necessarily have the best storytelling sense, and you get farther and farther away from the really strong storytellers. I look at this page. We have an odd perspective on the girl in the first panel. Um, it really doesn't work to have Spider-Man in the second panel swinging back into the first.
Yeah.
That kind of really throws off the storytelling, and is kind of awkward. Um, I can't really quite make out what's going on between panels 2 and 3. It's just okay. He almost reversed the angle on us, but it just seems harder to follow than it ought to be. Um, get to panel 4. There's no reason for that to be an inset panel to panel 3. It looks to me, most of the time, inset panels like this look like a production mistake to me.
Okay.
So that doesn't quite work. Then we get into the big double page panel across the bottom, and he's made it so confusing, so busy that it's tough for the reader to know what to look at next in a way.
Right.
The reader's eye kind of goes from the webbing over to Spider-Man and then across, but then it's also trying to go from the bottom where you've got the guy on the right, I don't know, taking a picture or something with his camera, and then trying to follow it all the way to the left, which is kind of going against the grain, and it's not doing as well as it should. And I couldn't really tell what Spider-Man was doing. He had the girl in his arm in panel 2, somehow dropped the girl or let go of the girl and picked up a dog. It's almost like he's trying to accomplish too much in one panel and not in the clearest way possible.
Right.
There are ways to do these things which are schematic panels where you keep them very clear. Up on my website, on my blog, I show examples of these schematic panels, and you do them with utmost clarity so there's no confusion of what's going on. This is not that.
And your blog is Nibbled to Death by Ducks, right?
Yeah, Nibbled to Death by Ducks. It's davidcampetti.com. I've been I don't post too often on it anymore, but there's like 12 years of postings on there, many of them about all aspects of creating comics, how to submit portfolios, mistakes editors make, mistakes artists make when submitting to editors, just a whole range of things that folks can learn from. All right, so I'm here and I'm on the left-hand page. Yeah, it's okay. Marvel might have even bought this in 1978 because they were putting out piles of books, and the talent pool wasn't as massive as it is now, where a combination of the internet and folks like me as agents brought artists in from all over the world.
Right.
And some of them had pretty mad storytelling or drawing skills that just beat this out.
And
So,
back in the day, there was all kinds of stories of people actually just stomping their way into Marvel, the Marvel headquarters, and slapping down a portfolio and being like, "Here, what do you think? I want a job," which doesn't happen anymore.
yeah, I mean, I've been known to walk into Marvel with a bunch of portfolios, but they know who I am. So I've been. We've been producing artwork for Marvel since 1995. Yeah, so all the storytelling on a lot of this is kind of a mess. That last page doesn't really work. None of the pages is as strong as it should be. It should be in the storytelling sense, and the drawing is okay, but it doesn't have me doing Spider-Man type cartwheels.
Right.
So it's okay, but the problem is there's a lot of people submitting that are just okay. So if you don't stand out in the crowd, why will the editor hire this guy instead of someone else? He won't. I look at slightly different in terms of style, and it's just okay. Still a lot of long shots. At least this is clearer. It's not trying to get confusing like the other pages were, but basic sequence here. Yeah, it's okay. He seems to have a thing about making the last panel in the page the big panel, the strong panel.
Right.
And that works once in a while, but it shouldn't be almost every page. Yeah, the pages are all sort of okay, and I could see him getting some work with the little companies, but he's not yet at a level where the editors are likely to give him enough high-paying work to earn a real living, because he's up against literally hundreds of artists that are trying to get jobs, maybe thousands.
Right. So you would say this is like semi-solid mid-tier work?
I wouldn't say mid-tier work, or he'd be doing work at Dynamite and IDW and those guys. But I don't think he's at that level yet. Uh, but there's two things to consider here. One is that he may never have been properly guided by an experienced editor that says, all right, on here's a story, but I want you to focus on this and this and this and this, and guide him through the layouts. And then once the layouts are done and he's working on the artwork, having him finesse even the pages in pencil stage before they get to the finish, that kind of guidance may help him a lot.
Okay.
So if he doesn't have an editor paying him that's going to give him real editorial feedback, he can always go to my website. There's 9 or 10 sample plots there that he could pull down, or he could ask me for a sample script to work from that he could submit layouts, and I can give him some feedback. So he's a guy with some talent that, sure, I'd love to see him at the level where he's getting work. He's certainly willing to put in the effort on the pages by the sheer amount of detail he's put on some of them.
Right.
And it strikes me, in a way, I like these more oddball, non-superhero things of his better than what the stuff he was trying to do with Spider-Man. So
yeah, it's a lot more clear.
Yeah, and so maybe that, for at least now, should be his specialty, not so much the superhero stuff. This is all disjointed for me. Yeah, okay, fine. I understand the design element of putting, a big Daredevil head on the left and a big Kingpin head on the right, and then the action across the bottom. But it doesn't seem especially well done. And I could pull up dozens of people from my own roster that I could say, okay, I can have you do this page, and it'd be a far better page than this is. And that becomes the problem. If I have dozens of guys that are better, they'd be more likely to get the job than this fellow. And so he needs to really work to get to the next level, not just in terms of finesse and finishing, but in terms of storytelling, with storytelling being the strongest there, that he needs to reach that fine level.
Right.
Because comics is all about the sequential storytelling. And he really also needs to think a bit more about where those word balloons are going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another thing a lot of artists don't think about.
Yeah. I'd have trouble placing word balloons on a lot of these pages.
Why does it look like Daredevil's wearing camouflage pants and combat boots? That's funny.
Yeah, could be.
All right. So on to our next portfolio.
Pencils. Okay. Let's see which one is that's this one. All right, let me flip through. Okay, I know where that's going. All right. So I looked at this and some of the sense of finish I like, especially the rendering in the hair and on the on the girl's spacesuit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice technique. You could probably darken it in Photoshop, finesse it a little, and it would look inked.
Right.
A lot of pencilers can't do that. So that shows a good level of skill. This page is really kind of okay. I don't understand why the first panel drops into panel 3. And the second panel does the same. It didn't have to. That didn't improve telling the story any. I'm not sure in those 3 panels where I would put the word balloons. The amount of detail is certainly fine. for whatever reason, maybe it's because in panels 1, 2, and 3, hands have been cropped out of the shots on the foreground characters, but everything seems frozen. Okay, here's a head in panel 1. Here's another head in panel 2. There's 2 heads in panel 3. There's a back of a couple more heads in panel 4. I'm not getting a lot of staging of movement. It's like things have already happened. Character panels 1, 2, 3, just people looking at things. Panel 4, in the middle of pulling off that spacesuit, but I don't quite get what's going on here. But follow me. Okay, panel 2. The woman with the short cropped hair is looking at the lady in the a Michelin tire spacesuit. Panel 3, they're both turning to look at what's behind them, but I'm not sure what they're looking at. It's just some background. So
Right.
I don't have a context yet. So panel 4, we still have never gotten a clear shot of both of those characters, but now we've only pulled back like a badly cropped shot of her removing the spacesuit, and it's like awkward. I don't have a sense of place or a real establishing of them two together. Just something seems off. And then panel 1, 2, 3, panel 5, one of the characters is putting on a helmet, but I don't know where the helmet came from because it wasn't in the first 4 panels. So there's a lot of little stuff like that that didn't really work for me. And once their helmets are on, I can't tell which character is which in the back.
Right. Would you say that it would behoove a potential comic artist or a future comic artist to study film shots of great directors?
Oh, sure. One of the things I've told artists along the way is when they are designing their panels, and I will find problems with them. Why is the character standing over here? Why are they now 8 feet apart when they were 3 feet apart in the previous shot? I'll say things like, imagine you're the director of a film blocking out these scenes. So once you've done that, you understand how far these characters are from one another and where the props are in the scene that they need to interact with.
Right.
So if they start thinking in those terms and then watching film thinking about how the directors block the scenes and give establishing shots and so forth, they'll learn from all that. It's like how Will Eisner learned from film noir back in when he was doing The Spirit back in the 40s and 50s and so forth. You can learn a lot from looking at the good directors of film and incorporating that into your own scenes.
Yeah, Raven says he does a lot of over design for the background without really establishing it. Very difficult to understand where in the spaceship they are and why.
I agree with that. Let's look here. All right, this throws me off completely. If this is a continuation of this, how does that work? Look at the ceiling. 1, 2, 3, panel 5, we see the ceiling, which can be no more than 6 or 7 feet up. I took it to be a cramped, almost submarine type of situation. But I get to the next page and there's this giant creature that suddenly came in there and is, I don't know, 12 feet high. It's much, much higher than the ceiling that was allowed for and what passed as an establishing shot in the previous page.
Right. And I think they're coming outside.
I have no indication of that because over here, Again, they're just kind of standing there,
Right.
and I don't know if in panel one, two, three, panel five, she's supposed to be going up the stairs, coming down the stairs to join her there. I don't know, but then in the next panel, if that's indeed outside, we didn't get a clear enough establishing shot to tell us that, or I wouldn't be having these questions.
Exactly.
And it's not me being stupid. I've been reading comics for 60 years, you know. Yeah. So, okay, all right, let's assume we're outside. It would have been nice to have gotten something in the previous panel that made that more clear.
Right.
Um, I guess this is a different story.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, everything distance shots. He loves back shots, backs and heads. There's an awful lot of that. Okay. Different story, same story. I can't quite tell. I guess this is Ghost Rider now.
Yeah, this is Ghost Rider.
All right. Oh, okay. Guy looked like he's plopped in from the cover of a magazine. Okay. Ghost Rider in forced perspective. Is there a good, valid, important storytelling reason that panel 2 is in a circle? If not, you probably shouldn't do it. I guess Ghost Rider is breaking through a gate that we don't see the gate. Okay, I'm lost. Where was the gate?
Right.
They're already in a cemetery. She's not busting through the gate to get out of the cemetery. In the next 3 panels, they're still in the cemetery. I'm not sure what has happened.
Yeah. Panel 2 doesn't need to be there at all, Raven says.
Well, yeah, of course. And I guess this is yet a different scene. Okay. Well, at least it's not the back of heads. Yeah, it's okay. Got a question. You have one of those headpieces just like that guy there. If you're going to touch your face, are you able to get your hand under that earpiece, or would it go over?
It would go over. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm kind of confused by that one too. So I look at this. It's like, all right, it's an establishing shot, but it's really kind of not, because he's cropped it kind of oddly. Panel 2, the angle doesn't really work with his screen. The hand doesn't really work on the head. We get to panel 3, and suddenly his other hand is up against the other side of his face. Panel 4, the hand that was in panel 2 is now up on his face. So the hands are magically changing, but we don't see him changing. That's basic storytelling 101 stuff that shouldn't be there. So Page really didn't work for me. He has some finesse in the drawing, but the actual drawing and the storytelling really need a lot of work. Now I get to this and these other pages, and they seem older pages. So they seem to have even less finesse to them.
Right.
So without the finesse that was in the hair of those earlier pages and so forth, we're just left with not strong enough storytelling and not good enough drawing. Panel 1, the guy outside on a street where nobody's there, and the perspective is really wonky. Perspective, or panel 2, I don't know where this woman has come from. I don't know what's happening here. What, she came running out, open up my jar for me. I need my pickles.
She needed a pickle jar opened.
I don't quite get it. But man, he's having trouble with those pickles. Oh my
Right?
God. Okay.
Pickles.
Yeah. Okay. Those pickles shoot up in the air. Wow, really exciting pickles. Those are not real buildings. So, what is that? Styrofoam packing? What the hell? And it just gets wonkier and wonkier as he goes. You look at panel 3, it's like, okay, he's not even trying to draw an arm and shape and folds in the sleeves. It's kind of like he's given up, or at this stage didn't really know what to do. I get to it's like, okay, this just isn't good enough. He's trying to put in the effort with these things, but effort without the strong storytelling, he just isn't ready. Different style here. This is even worse. And so where I am, I would have left out. Would have started over at this point, but I would have left out everything past page 5 here.
Right.
Because
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, it's all older stuff that isn't as good as these earliest pages, and it's like it seemed as though these pages got worse as he went along. So he has a ways to go. But I think if he worked off of some professional scripts and got some professional feedback, he might get better. But he's got a ways to go.
Right. And he has to be open to suggestion and advice. And putting the work in.
Oh yeah, and if you got guys that are going to argue with you why they did something, or I did that deliberately. Oh, you wanted deliberately to be bad? Okay. And I've had those arguments.
That drives me nuts when an artist takes bad drawing or bad art and says, "That's my style."
Well, congratulations. Enjoy being a fan artist. Yeah, but,
right. Exactly.
This guy will probably get better. It looks like he wants to do this, but
yes,
he's got to learn not to put his bad stuff here. And oh gosh, I hope he doesn't post the bad stuff online. I get so many people who post their crap on DeviantArt or ArtStation or whatever, and it becomes just a drop place for everything they've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they start looking for a job, they send a link to all the bad stuff to the editor, and then they wonder why they didn't get the job.
Right. Exactly.
All right. On to the next guy.
All right.
Okay. What do we have here? All right. Let's see here. We flip through this stuff. All right, this fellow is more accomplished. I suspect he's already getting work, but
he is.
My guess is he's getting work from the small to mid-sized companies.
This gentleman is actually from Ukraine,
okay.
And he's getting work from Ukrainian publishers.
Oh, that makes sense. You get a lot of guys and gals that work in their home countries where the talent pool is smaller and where the publishers are, of course, likely to go with homegrown talent.
Right.
You look at the best guys who've ever been on my roster, and you realize they all got started out in their native Brazil or the Philippines or Indonesia or wherever they hailed from before they showed me work and got work in the U.S. So if the guy's getting work in Ukraine, I hope he's safe.
Exactly.
But this is decent enough stuff. It reminds me in a way of some of the second tier Warren stuff that they did. I'm an old guy, so that's what I refer to. That that was done in decades past. It looks like an old-fashioned style. Um, One of the things you will find is this stuff really looks frozen, as if um, as if he's posting action or posing action figures
Right.
rather than uh, powerful storytelling of characters in motion.
And
And
for our listeners who don't know, Warren Publishing, that was Vampirella, wasn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
creepy, eerie, Vampirella.
Yeah.
There were several other titles, but those were the main ones, and they used a lot of wonderful Spanish artists. Some that were wonderful storytellers, some that were not so, but all were brilliant illustrators. So even the weakest of them at least had reasonably solid storytelling, but their figures tended to be stiff, but the rendering was so beautiful you didn't care.
Right.
Um, so this comes off as like second tier. I could certainly see some American publishers using this as is. I mean, this rendering technique he's got here is yes. I was going to say Warrant with Shutter, Raven. That this would fit very well with them. At least the more moody stuff right here. I think that Warrant could use them. Uh, so there's nothing wrong with any of this, but it's not as dramatic as it needs to be. It's all medium shots. This guy has never seen Gil Kane or John Buscema or Neil Adams putting, learning from their sense of storytelling.
Right.
And I think if he did, it would improve a lot. Uh, this as a cover, this is pretty cool. But it's one step down from where it should be. The rendering, I think, is wonderful. But imagine the storytelling here if the hands weren't going jazz hands and were more dramatically clawed and reaching toward the guy, or if the guy instead of just posing, holding the axe, were swinging it would add so much more immediacy and drama to the shot.
Right.
Yeah. This is another one where, okay, I'm looking at it, but it really feels frozen in time. Uh, and if you would look at, say, Frazetta doing a painting like this, or back when Frazetta did comics art, uh, he would do something like this, but there would be a sense of urgency, a sense of energy to it that is not here. This kind of looks like he took two action figures that were upright, took a picture of them turned sideways, and just drew from that.
Yeah, because a lot of artists would come back and say, "But David, that's what comics are. That's what paintings and comics, everything are. They're moments in time that are frozen in time."
But they're not. You're simulating the whole point of storytelling isn't to tell what you can get in a photograph. It's to simulate the movement that you get in film.
Right.
Which is why this is what something I've found fascinating. When you looked in the 1960s and 70s at these things that tried to be comic book movies or comic book TV shows, they always failed because they could never show the energy and power that were in those comics that we were growing up on.
Right.
And then the technology and the sense of urgency came with the Marvel movies and so forth. So now the movies have the energy and power And the comics now look like the TV shows of the 60s and 70s, where it's missing all that energy and power. And
Exactly.
it's kind of, comics have slid backwards. And then people will say, if they say, well, that's comics now. And yeah, look at our readership. What do we get? The best-selling comics are selling 20 or 30,000 copies instead of 500,000 or 1,000,000. So I'd rather see the comics more accessible, more exciting.
So, would you say that a comic artist could definitely benefit from even saying watching good animation, like Bugs Bunny, Warner Brothers, because they learn the balance and the stretch and the sense of action and motion.
Yeah, there are ways that guys can learn how to do this. Um, I don't even know. Do you know artist Tom Grinberg's work?
I'm not familiar with him.
All right, Tom Grinberg, I think, went on to do Tarzan, and he worked at DC and Marvel for a while. Very, very good artist. I knew him when he was just a fan like me, around 1980, 1981. He came to my house in Wheeling, West Virginia. I had an apartment on 33rd Street, and he stayed with me. And he was trying to develop at the time sort of a cross between Neil Adams and John Buscema for his style, but he really wasn't getting strong storytelling. So we ran an exercise at my house. I gave him a panel by panel description of like the first 5 pages of the first Silver Surfer. Pretty simple, just one character, the surfer flying around and so forth. And said, okay, just try to lay these out. And he did. And then I pulled out the Silver Surfer books that I had given him the descriptions from. And he said, oh, that's what I could be doing.
Right.
And he could compare what he did with the strong storytelling that was there, and something clicked. And then he went away, and I didn't hear from him for a long time, but he got work at the companies, and he was incorporating all that strong storytelling. So he had learned in that moment what to do, and went on to do some great stuff.
Fantastic
And
story.
yeah, and I think artists can learn to do that. Have somebody look at a wonderfully, you know, powerful storytelling from a comic, give them the panel descriptions, write them down, explain it to them, whatever it is, and have them try to draw from that and then compare. Or they can find strong layouts online from Buscema, from Kane, from Neil Adams, from Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, for God's sake, who's like every page of his is like a master class in how to draw. Um, find those layouts and try drawing over them. If your normal stuff is too stiff, try drawing over them in your style, and you'll see how to put the exaggeration into it. I may have given the story here before, so I'll just give an abbreviated version. I had an artist that was way too stiff with the stuff. I had got him some work at Marvel. He ended up being fired because he couldn't grow beyond that. So I put him with one of my best storytelling artists, who was a cartoonist. She was doing a lot of storyboard work for animation, and had her lay out a story for him. And he said, I really can't draw like cartoony like that. And I said, don't. Just follow her layouts. Don't stiffen them up. And he fought me on it. But once he did, and he said, it looks silly. It looks too exaggerated. I showed it to Marvel, and they said, this is what we need. And he was hired, and finally it clicked in his mind, and he went on to a great career. But there's a lot that can be learned from working over strong storytelling if you haven't mastered it. I look at this guy from the Ukraine, and he's got all the drawing. And I mean, I'm looking at this piece right now. That's really very good. but it's all kind of on the same plane. He could have done something with perspective or whatever, and taken it just one more level up. This is another one. It's very good for what it is. I would like to see it one more level up in terms of the energy. Um, I would be happy to work with this guy and try to train him up a bit, just to see if he could take that extra notch and go from very good to amazing. But
And yeah, he is absolutely interested in that as
yeah,
well. So
yeah, jazz hands. Um, but yeah, yeah. Let's put this guy in touch with me, and I'll give him a try. I'll give him a few pages to try drawing, and that other better storytellers have done, and then he can use them as a point of comparison.
perfect.
Yeah. So out of the three, he's the best guy. It would be easy to see that he's getting some work now. And Raven is right. We could be showing his work to Warrant, and I think they could give him work because he does have that old Warren comics feel to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're, I think, ending on a high note. He's got some very nice stuff. We got a blank screen here.
Hold on here. Oh, I got to switch over. Sorry, my bad.
There we are.
That's better. All right. Well, that was a great way to wrap up the show. Fantastic final portfolio, and I will definitely get this gentleman in contact with you. So,
That would be terrific. Let's see. Do we have anybody lined up for next week yet?
we do have a couple.
Yeah,
What is next week?
yeah, because we're battling with our schedule.
We are.
We might not do live at 8 p.m. Saturday moving forward. We might switch to another time to make things more accessible to some of these artists that are overseas and the time difference may matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple that are possibilities. So,
All right, so people should look to your and my social media pages. So
yes.
we'll announce in the days to come who will be next week, and we'll try to make it fun and furious.
Yes, and if you would like to submit any portfolios, you can submit them to David at glasshousegraphics.com. You can also send them to me at ghthrowingstones at glasshouse.com. So that
And if anybody wants to check out that blog of mine, that's just davidcampetti.com.
yes, nibbled to death by ducks. I love that name. How did you come across that name? I don't know if I know that story.
There's a phrase, and it's been so long I can't remember where it came from originally. Death is like getting nibbled to death by ducks, because it's 1,001 small bites that get to you. Those one or two or three are just irritating, but 1,001 of those things will kill you because they've just ripped so much out of you. So I had started it to bitch, whine, and moan about a number of things in life. And right after I started it, it became obvious that this was a great place to tell stories about um, artists trying to break in, mistakes they've made, uh, frustrations with editors, stuff that should never have happened, people that don't pay. It's a whole bunch of different things. And I even had a couple of shirts made at one point. I have a picture of the late great Al Rio and myself in our nibbled to death by ducks shirts. But I've kept the name around even though all these years have passed, and I think it's a good storehouse of some of my better stories about stuff that artists and colorists can learn from.
Getting old is like being nibbled to death by ducks.
There
Groucho
you go.
Marx. Fantastic. And hopefully someday, maybe the name of your book, Nibbled to Death by Ducks.
Maybe I should do that. I keep people keep telling me I ought to take all these true stories that I keep posting on Facebook and assemble them into a book.
I think
So
that would be a bestseller.
maybe I'll find time to do it, but I elected to do this podcast instead. So I hope folks are learning from it.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. And it's been great talking with John Rauch. And of course, the portfolio reviews are always fantastic. So be sure to tune in again next Saturday at 8 o'clock. I'm not sure if it's going to be live or not, but we will be here. And you all have a great rest of your night.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. Bye.